Right. So we got a really, really interesting blog post from a listener this week.
Yeah, this was pretty cool.
It's from blogwidow.com,
Uh,
and it's titled 10 Unknown Secrets of Temu's Business Strategy.
right.
And I think this will be a really interesting deep dive for us to kind of go through, because Temu's obviously blowing up right now.
Yeah, it's
But
everywhere.
seems like they're kind of everywhere, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and we've kind of been watching this for a little while, but this blog post from Blog Widow, I think has some really interesting insights into how they're doing it.
Yeah, and it's really about going deeper than just the surface level stuff.
Right.
Like everybody knows they're an online retailer,
Right.
but this article digs into some of the more like strategic and nuanced
Uh-huh.
choices that they've made
Yeah.
to really get to where they are.
Okay, so let's jump right into it.
Okay.
The first unknown secret that Blog Widow talks about is hyper-personalization. And they're talking about how Temu uses all these algorithms and AI to deliver these product recommendations that are like really, really tailored.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that, we all kind of see now on different websites, Amazon.
Yeah.
You buy a pair of sneakers, you're going to see more sneakers.
Right.
But this hyper-personalization that Temu is doing sounds like it's a little bit on another level.
Yeah. I think the key here is that they're not just recommending similar items based on what you just bought.
Okay.
They're probably building these incredibly detailed profiles of each user
Okay.
that include not just your purchase history, but like your browsing behavior across different sessions.
Right.
Like how long you spend looking at certain types of products.
Wow.
And they might even be pulling in external data points
Oh, really?
that we don't even know about.
Oh, interesting.
And this level of granularity
Yeah.
allows them to anticipate like your needs that you might even realize you have.
Right.
And then they can target you with things that you're way more likely to buy.
Okay, so give me an example of what that might actually look like.
Sure. So imagine you buy a pair of sneakers on Temu.
Okay.
But while you were browsing, you also spent a lot of time looking at insoles.
Right.
So maybe Temu's algorithm picks up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just showing you more sneakers,
Yeah.
they start showing you ads for a specific brand
Mm-hmm.
that's known for their arch support.
Okay.
Because they're thinking, hey, this person's probably looking for a little extra support in their shoes.
I see. So it's not just about what you bought. It's about like all these subtle signals and patterns.
Exactly. It's about understanding you as a consumer on a much deeper level.
Wow. Okay, so that's hyper-personalization and how they're really using it to drive sales.
Mm-hmm.
The second point that the Blog Widow post brings up is all about data-driven decision-making.
Right.
And I think this is something that a lot of companies talk about, but it seems like Temu has really taken it to a whole other level.
Yeah, they're not just using data, they're like swimming in it.
Right.
They're monitoring everything, every click,
Right.
every item added to a cart, every abandoned purchase.
Wow.
It's all being tracked and analyzed in real time.
So what do they do with all that data?
So that's the really interesting part.
Okay.
They use it to be incredibly agile.
Uh-huh.
Like they can identify emerging trends almost instantly.
Yeah.
So if they see that suddenly a certain type of handbag
Yeah.
is becoming super popular,
Mm.
they can adjust their inventory
Okay.
to make sure they have enough of those handbags in stock.
Gotcha.
And they can also fine-tune their marketing campaigns
Right.
to really push those handbags.
So it's like they have this real-time weather map of consumer interest.
Yeah, exactly. And they're constantly adjusting their sales based on what they see.
Okay, so they're using data to personalize recommendations,
Uh-huh.
and then they're also using data to just make these really smart decisions about everything about their business.
Yeah, from what products to stock to
Yeah.
how to market them.
Okay, and the third point that Blog Widow talks about is their use of micro-influencer marketing.
Right.
And this is really interesting to me because it seems like a lot of companies are just chasing after these big celebrities.
Yeah, the big names
Yeah.
with millions of followers.
Right, but Temu is doing something different. They're working with these smaller influencers who have really engaged niche followings.
Yeah, and this is a really smart strategy because these micro-influencers,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to have a much stronger sense of community
Right,
with their followers.
right.
Like, people trust their recommendations more
Yeah,
than they trust some random celebrity who's getting paid millions of dollars
right.
to endorse a product.
It feels more genuine, right?
Exactly. And for Temu, that means higher conversion rates
Okay.
because people are actually buying the products that these micro-influencers are recommending.
And I imagine it's probably a lot more cost-effective, too.
Yeah. You're not paying these huge celebrity endorsement fees.
Right.
You're working with people who are more passionate about their niche. and who are more excited to share products that they genuinely believe in.
Yeah, it's like a win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on to point number 4, Blog Widow dives into Temu's supply chain.
Okay.
And specifically, they highlight these exclusive relationships that Temu has with manufacturers.
Right.
And this allows them to cut out the middleman
Uh-huh.
and offer these super competitive prices.
Yeah.
Now, we've all heard about direct-to-consumer models, right?
Right.
But this exclusive thing suggests that it's like a much deeper level of integration.
Yeah, it's not just about buying directly from the manufacturer.
Right.
It's about having these agreements
Mm-hmm.
that give Temu priority in production
Wow.
and potentially even influence over the design and manufacturing process.
So they're not just buying what the manufacturer's already making.
Not necessarily.
They're actually working with the manufacturer to create products.
Yeah, they're using their data
Mm-hmm.
to tell the manufacturer what's selling, what's trending. And then they're working together to create products that are specifically designed to meet those demands.
That's pretty powerful.
It is.
Okay, so point number 5 is all about diversified revenue streams.
Okay.
And Blog Widow points out that Temu isn't just relying on those standard sales commissions.
Right.
They're also generating revenue from advertising,
Mm-hmm.
premium seller listings, and even data monetization.
Right. And this is really smart
Okay,
because it creates multiple streams of income for them.
right.
So they're not as vulnerable to market fluctuation or
Okay.
increased competition.
So like if one revenue stream starts to dry up,
Right.
they've got these other ones to fall back on.
Exactly. It gives
Ah.
them a lot more stability and flexibility.
Okay, so give me some examples of how they're actually doing this.
Sure. So they're selling advertising space to sellers
Okay,
who want to boost the visibility of their products.
makes sense.
They're charging sellers for premium placement in search results.
Okay.
And they might even be selling anonymized and aggregated trend data to their suppliers.
Interesting.
So they're basically creating this whole ecosystem where different players
Right.
are contributing to their overall revenue.
Okay, so it's not just an e-commerce platform, it's like a whole business model.
Right. It's a very sophisticated and well thought out approach.
Okay, so point number 6 is all about their investment in cutting-edge technology.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that technology is essential for any modern online retailer, right?
Right.
But I think it's important to highlight the specific ways that Temu's using technology to really drive their success.
Yeah, they're not just using technology for the sake of using technology.
Right.
They're making very strategic investments
Okay.
in things like cloud computing, AI, and machine learning.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. Like,
Sure.
what does their cloud infrastructure actually do for them?
So their cloud infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
is what allows them to handle these huge spikes in traffic
Right.
during their flash sales.
Okay.
Like they're able to scale their operations up and down almost instantly,
Wow.
depending on the demand.
And then what about AI and machine learning?
So they're using AI for things like their recommendation engines,
Okay.
which are constantly learning and retraining
Uh-huh.
on massive data sets.
Okay.
So they can deliver these hyper-personalized recommendations
Right.
that we were talking about earlier.
And I imagine machine learning is also helping them with things like logistics and fraud detection.
Yeah, absolutely. They're using it to predict demand,
Right.
optimize their shipping routes,
Mm-hmm.
and identify potentially fraudulent transactions.
Okay. So they're basically using technology to streamline their entire operation.
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
making sure that everything is running as smoothly and efficiently as possible.
Okay, so moving on to point number 7.
Okay.
Blog Widow talks about Temu's aggressive international expansion. And it's one thing to ship your products worldwide,
Uh-huh.
but Temu's doing more than that.
Yeah, they're not just shipping products.
Right.
They're actually localizing their offerings
Right.
for each market.
Right. So give me an example of what that looks like.
Sure. So they're offering local payment options
Okay.
that customers in each country are familiar with.
Right.
They're curating product selections
Mm-hmm.
that align with regional preferences.
Okay.
And they're even tailoring their marketing messages
Right.
to resonate with local cultures.
So they're really doing their homework
They are.
and understanding the nuances of each market.
Yeah. They're not just taking a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
They're really putting in the effort to make sure that their offerings are relevant and appealing.
To customers all over the world.
Exactly.
Okay, so point number 8
Okay.
is all about customer loyalty programs and gamification.
Right.
And Blog Widow highlights how Temu is using rewards,
Mm-hmm.
discounts, points, systems,
Daily check-ins.
daily check-ins, mystery discounts
All sorts of things.
to keep customers engaged and coming back for more.
Yeah. It's not just your basic rewards program.
Right.
They're really using gamification to make the shopping experience more fun and addictive.
Okay, so explain how that works.
Sure. So those daily check-ins,
Uh-huh.
they create a habit loop.
Okay.
They encourage users to open the app every day,
Right.
even if they're not planning to buy anything.
Gotcha.
And then the points systems,
Mm-hmm.
they give you a sense of progress and accomplishment
Right.
as you earn more points.
And then those mystery discounts,
Yeah.
they add an element of surprise and excitement.
Right. It's like opening a present every time you shop.
Yeah. So they're really turning shopping into a game.
They are.
Okay, and moving on to point number 9, Blog Widow talks about Temu's lean operations
Right.
and how they're leveraging automation, cloud solutions, and outsourcing to keep their overhead low.
Yeah, they're really focused on efficiency.
Right.
And that's what allows them to offer those competitive prices
Okay.
and scale so rapidly
Right.
without being weighed down by a lot of costs.
So give me some examples of how they're actually doing this.
Sure. So they're automating a lot of their tasks, like order processing and customer service.
Right.
They're using cloud-based solutions,
Uh-huh.
which are more flexible and cost-effective
Okay.
than traditional IT infrastructure.
Gotcha.
And they're outsourcing things like warehousing and delivery
Right.
in certain regions.
So they're not trying to do everything themselves.
Exactly. They're focusing on their core competencies,
Uh-huh.
and they're partnering with other companies to handle the rest.
Smart.
It is.
Okay, and finally, point number 10.
Okay.
Blog Widow highlights Temu's customer-centric approach to product development.
Right.
And this is something that a lot of companies talk about, but Temu seems to be really walking the walk.
Yeah, they're actively incorporating customer feedback
Right.
into their UI improvements and new features.
So they're not just collecting feedback.
No.
They're actually using it.
Yeah, they're listening to their customers,
Right.
and they're making changes based on what they hear.
So what's the impact of that?
Well, it creates a more user-friendly and effective platform,
Mm-hmm.
but it also fosters a stronger sense of loyalty and community
Right.
among Temu's users.
Yeah. When customers see that their feedback is being taken seriously,
Uh-huh.
they're more likely to stick around.
Exactly. They feel like they're part of something.
Okay, so if we take a step back and look at everything we've just discussed,
Mm-hmm.
Temu's success seems to be driven by this really deliberate and interconnected strategy.
Right.
It's about hyper-personalized experiences
Mm-hmm.
fueled by data analysis,
Uh-huh.
innovative marketing tactics,
Strong supplier relationships,
diversified revenue streams,
cutting-edge technology,
aggressive global expansion,
engaging customer loyalty programs,
lean operations.
and a genuine focus on customer feedback.
It's really impressive.
It is. They've really thought this through.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of valuable insights here for anyone who's interested in e-commerce
Absolutely.
or just the broader tech landscape in general.
Yeah, these are trends that we're seeing across a lot of successful companies.
Right.
And it's fascinating to see how Temu is really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see what they do next.
Yeah, where do they go from here?
Right, because they're obviously not slowing down.
No, they're just getting started.
Right, and what are the challenges that they're going to face as
Mhm.
they continue to grow at this pace?
Right. Can they maintain this level of innovation and agility
Yeah.
as they get bigger and bigger?
And how are they going to navigate the complexities of operating in so many different markets?
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. But I'm sure they're up for the challenge.
Yeah, they seem to be a very ambitious and capable company.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to watch their journey
Absolutely.
and see what they accomplish in the years to come.
I'm excited to see what they do next.
Me too.
All right.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Temu's business strategy.
It was a pleasure.
We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic.
Okay, sounds good.
See you then.